thank you for joining. Thank you so much. I'm super stoked for this. First question I asked everyone is, when did you know music was going to be a part of your life?
There's kind of like one there's like one moment that I can remember that kind of like kicked everything off, and then there's several moments after that that like reassured and like I officially decided this was going to be my life. But the first one was very early. I must have been in junior high, and I have an older sister who's 4 years older than me. So she was in high school, and I remember she just like walked into my room one day and like handed me a stack of CDs, and she was just like, Benny, let me know which ones you like and I'll burn them for you. And she actually gave the CDs to me and my brother. And then so she was like, let me know which ones you like. And in that like first bunch of CDs was Bad Religion, Goldfinger, Bouncing Souls, Pennywise, Mighty Mighty Bosstones, Less Than Jake. Like that was kind of just my like gateway chunk to punk rock and ska music. Um, and then I still have a couple of those, like the original CDs that you gave me in junior high, and they don't play anymore, obviously, but I couldn't throw them away because it was just like, yeah. So that was like, oh, I was like, oh, okay, like music is really cool. I think this is now a part of who I am, And then just from there, it just like it keeps going. You meet friends who like the same music. You eventually start playing. You maybe playing bands, and you just meet people, and it just like grows and grows and grows.
Yeah, I mean that's a strong stack of CDs right there. Those are
Yeah. And I
some
was so young, and like I don't even remember. I just like I think I was maybe just like my sister's cool. This is cool, or like or maybe even like my parents don't like this. This is cool. Like I don't even remember why I picked the CD. Like I don't even know. But
do you remember how old you were when you got those
so
CDs?
so I would have been in junior high, so that would have been like, oh man, I don't even know,
Like
13,
$2,000-ish.
14. Yeah, that would have been like 2000-ish. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
That's crazy. So after you got that, like when you heard those, were you inspired to play music already, or did that kind of come down later?
That
Like,
definitely came later. I was a little bit of a late bloomer when it comes to playing music and being a musician. I didn't really pick up bass guitar until like sophomore, junior year of high school. Um, and then I kind of just started playing a little bit here and there. In early college, I started booking shows with my brother. I have a twin brother, and we both love music. And in early college, we started booking shows, and then that was another point in my life where I was like, oh, this is totally where I want to be. Like all of this just makes sense. Like just bringing people together and like spreading good music and good messages to everybody. It was like, oh, this is great. And then it was shortly after that, I just decided to study music for like 1 year at college and see what it was like. In that 1 year, it was at community college. I just like completely fell in love with music and studying music and just learning more and more. And at that point, I was just like a sponge with like learning how to play music and learning everything that goes in. And then I remember I was like, um, I was like, well, if I have to get a bachelor's degree, right? Because society says you have to get a bachelor's degree, or at least my family told me I had to get a bachelor's degree. I was like, well, I might as well enjoy it. And so I went to music for jazz studies at a state university here in New York. And I had a great time studying music. And of course, my parents weren't too happy about me wanting to go to school for music. Um, and then a handful of years later, I was very lucky, and I have a really good. I have a good music career, and my parents were like, "Oh, okay, cool. You kind of you did it. All right, nice."
Yeah. Oh man. So prior to going to college for music, did you take like band in high school?
So I played trombone through junior high, and I hated it. Hated it. I skipped my lessons. It just like didn't click with me. And then yeah, I just picked up a bass guitar a couple years later. That clicked. It was cool because they're both bass clef instruments, so like some of it kind of still, the register still made sense to me.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I didn't like, but like I didn't do marching band. I never did concert band. I never did band summer camp. Like it took me a long time. I kind of like had to catch up in in college because like a lot of my friends had been playing for years, so it took me a long time to develop my ear because I just like never had an ear for like figuring out the notes.
Mhm.
All of that came much later. uh, yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me. Typically, like you said, like no, some friends I that went to school and graduated, like they did the whole band thing, like their whole high school, and then in like college they were there. But that's really cool to do that. I wanted to join like our community colleges, like I think it was like a Latin jazz band, but I was too late to do it or too late to like sign up or whatever it was. But and then I just started working, just left
Yeah.
school behind. So when did you start like forming your first band or like joining your first band?
Yeah. So yeah, my first band was kind of just with other friends who were studying music at the time. And it was a classic rock cover band, and which was fun for me at the time because like I never listened to classic rock. I mean, I still don't. But it was like it was really fun because it was just like opening up my ears to this like entire genre of music that I never listened to. And I knew that a lot of people appreciated it, and I could see that when we were playing. Um, but so that was my first like real band that like played shows. We were just a cover band, classic rock. We were called Hot Soup, and it was just with some friends of mine who we were all in college together, and like we were literally like in jazz band rehearsal, and then we would leave and then just go play like Zeppelin all night and things like that. And like, I didn't really understand what it was like at the time, but like that was a pretty big part to my playing because, and this is bass to bass, so I'm just going to go in like the bass nerd stuff. And I was learning how to develop my stamina with that band, because we would play at a bar 3-4 hours a night. And I just remember like at one point I was like, oh, my shoulder hurts. Like, what's going on? And it was like at that point where I just reassessed my playing, my technique. I got a couple books on like posture technique, the human body, and things like that. There's this one great book. Oh man, do I have it right here? I'll have to find it and get back to you. But it was like all about your tendons, your muscles in your arms and everything, and how that applies to playing bass guitar. It was really cool book. And so it was at that point that I bought, like a padded strap for my shoulder, so that didn't hurt anymore. At that time, I was playing a 5-string Mexican jazz bass, which was so heavy.
I have one right
Uh,
now.
yeah, it was so heavy.
It
And so
is.
I eventually switched to a lighter bass. And in that point is like that's the point where I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I gotta do it right so I'm not hurting myself and like burning myself out. And that was like the first time I experienced tendonitis in my arm. And yeah.
The good old days.
Oh
I
yeah.
I did the same thing. I actually moved to Austin, which is like known for music, and I would be in a cover band and we would just play like 4 times a week and there'd be 4 hour sets, and it was just like it was so wild. And at that time I wanted to be really cool, and I had an 8x10, and it was just the worst. Like it
You
was just
know,
the worst.
yeah. Big D and the Kids Table owns an 8x10, and that's the only time I ever play with an 8x10 because it just lives in the band's trailer. And every time, we have to carry it up 3 flights of stairs to go to the show, we hate it. We hate it. Like everybody, like it looks so cool on stage, and it sounds amazing, but other than that, it sucks. And oh, man, what was I just gonna say? Because you said, oh, and it's really funny because like a lot of people knock cover bands, right? And like I've been playing cover bands my entire life, my entire musical life, and I think a lot of it just depends on your approach and like what you're trying to do and get out of it, right? Like, so I really like learned how to play in cover bands, right? And like that's a really important skill, period. And then, but from after that, I was like, all right, well, who am I doing it with? And like at that point, I'm doing it with like some of my best friends. So it's like I'm gonna keep doing this. These are my best friends. We're making music. It's great. But later on, I was like, all right, well, what can you learn from playing in a cover band, right? And you can learn so much, even just the music and the repertoire alone. You like, it's like, all right, like I know from that cover band I told you about, I know 15 Zeppelin songs, right? I know 12 Stevie Wonder songs. I know handfuls of Michael Jackson songs. And it's like these songs are really popular and I get to learn them and I get to learn why they're really popular and why this bass line works. And if you can like start to approach it like that and then apply that to your own playing, that is just a wealth of knowledge that you can put into your own playing. It's like, yeah, all right, like this bass line works. Like Michael Jackson did it in his song. And like if I just move it over here, like I can do that same concept and make my own bass lines work, you know? So that's always been like my approach, like later on with playing cover bands and things like that, is like you can just learn so much from them.
Yeah, I totally agree. When you were learning those songs, where how were you learning them? Was it by ear? Or did you have the books or tabs?
All of the above.
Yeah.
A lot of it, because I mean, I've been in cover bands like my whole musical career. So starting out, yeah, probably a ton of tabs and all of that. It was a little bit later that I started developing my own ear and trying to learn them like that. And then I also like have a bunch of bass books as well. So like I can, I learned things through that as well. And then I mean, one of my favorite things is to find like a note for note transcription that like another bass player did and just like really take a deep dive into the song and get all of those subtleties that bass player did. So I mean, I learned them. A lot of it depends on how much time I have to learn the song.
Um, just out of curiosity, what's like one of your favorite bass lines that you learn, or maybe like an unexpected favorite bass line where you didn't know that you were gonna enjoy it so much?
Like from the cover band world.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a hard question right now because we're not playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so um, I need a set list. I wish I had
Yeah.
a set list in front of me. Uh, this is kind of a given, but Stevie Wonder's song "Master Blaster." It's like It's one of his few reggae songs,
Hmm.
and it's just like obviously I already love ska and reggae, so like that was like there's a little bit of cop out cheap answer, but like that one I was like, oh, this is freaking great. Like this is a huge hit song, and it's a reggae song, and I get to play reggae bass. That is cool with me. Um, I wish I could give you a better answer on that because there's
That.
definitely something. If I had my rep from the cover bands, I could look and tell you like, oh, I'd have to get back
Yeah.
to you on
No,
that.
it's all good. It's all good. That was a great answer. Um, and I was gonna bring this up later, but we talked about reading music. Like, to you, how important is that just ability to have?
For me personally, I for my own playing, I think it's a really important thing for me to have, because there's situations. where I have to read music. I will occasionally do like pit gigs and theater gigs and orchestra work and things like that, and I just like have to read music for 4 hours straight, sight reading music.
Mhm.
And so like yeah, for me personally, it's a really important skill, and it's something that I work frequently to get better on, and it's something that you need to work to continue being able to do it, because like the less you sight read, it just goes away. But like, it's a good question, because like everybody has a different relationship with music, right? Like everybody has a different relationship, everybody has different expectations from playing music. And like I know a lot of amazing musicians who don't read music or can read a little bit. And then there's not great musicians that can read music, right? Like it goes both ways.
Yeah.
But for me personally, it's really important because I do a lot of also like arrangement and composition, and I use music score writing programs to like write it all out. And so for me personally, it's huge reading music. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. When you joined Big D, did they have the music written out, or did you just have to kind of let you just
So yeah, I mean
learn?
every band has a different approach, like
Yeah.
and whatnot. So yeah, when I joined Big D, it was like a massive amount of repertoire. Like
Yeah.
luckily, my first tour with Big D, we were doing the Warp Tour in 2013. So I'm sure Warp Tour is like a 30-minute set. So they only gave me like, I don't know, 12, 15 songs to learn. And then that was it for the whole tour, because we were only playing 30 minutes every day.
Mm.
But then when I like officially joined the band later on, it was just like so much rep. And then later we did like full album shows and things like that. So I just like had to learn every single song. And that was a process that got easier, so much easier over time. Again, it's just like it's the kind of thing that like the more you transcribe and like learn and train your ears, it just gets better. So and then also I've learned like skills to make the songs easier to learn. Um, so yeah, now some of the Big D stuff is written out because I've written it out, because I've either written it out or I've like filmed myself playing it after I learn it,
Mhm.
so that a couple years later, if that song gets thrown in the set list again, I can just go to the video or I can go read the chart and then remember how to play the song. Because yeah, I've been with Big D for 7 or 8 years now.
Yeah.
And Steve Foote, the original bass player, was on every single record before that, so I had to learn all of his stuff. There's Yeah, and it was a lot. And those
Yeah.
recordings from Big D, the quality has changed over time as well. I mean, also they were like, just in college in the 90s when the first couple of records came out. So
Yeah.
they were recorded on a budget, right? And like, so what I do to learn some of those songs is like I put it into like I have a program on my computer that can like slow it down.
Hmm.
Um, and I'll slow it down to like insanely slow where it's not recognizable anymore. And then a lot of times I pitch shift the octave up too, so that it goes from this register to this register, and it cuts through the mix a little bit better. Yeah, it sounds like the Chipmunks, like
Yeah.
the kids table sound like the Chipmunks, but it puts the bass line in a register that makes it easier for me to hear. So I'll do that very, very often. And that's what I do with a lot of the things that I really take a deep dive into transcribe now.
Yeah. That's awesome. I haven't heard about that technique or anyone doing that, but yeah, I mean that's cool if it works for you. To
Yeah.
put in perspective, just for people who aren't familiar, Big D started in like 1995, and you come in 2013, so you're learning like 18 years worth of bass parts.
And then they
Uh,
mostly did an album every 2 years too. Mostly.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's wild. That's so cool. That's really cool though. So let's see. So how do you feel about just ska music right now? The state of ska.
I love ska. I really do. That doesn't answer your question, but I'll answer your question. Um, I think ska's in a great place right now. I mean, it's been around since the '60s, but depending on what wave you're talking about, there's a nostalgia factor with each of them, and then there's new fans every year with new bands and things like that. So like I have argued with some friends that ska is more popular now than it was in the '90s, and I will argue that only with my friends when we're just shooting the shit. But it's like
Yeah.
there are so many fans right now and so many new bands because of the nostalgia and because of the just how many years it's been around and how many bands there are and how many local bands there are and how much new music is being put out. I mean, you still got all of the staple bands that tour and play to full rooms every night they go out. You have a lot of new music just being released in the last 12 years, give or take, since the '90s. Well, 20 years now, I guess, since the and I think it's in a good place. I think it's in a good place for sure. It's like I love to see these bands, especially like the ska punk bands that are coming out now, and I go, oh man, this is so cool. Like not it's like, oh man, like this is the next iteration of ska punk, and this is great. And I like it doesn't sound like Big D and the Kids Table at all, right? And it's it's great. I mean, I made a playlist through the pandemic of ska punk bands that have been around for 10 years that are not like mainstream.
Mhm.
And I just started listening to it like through the pandemic because I was like, there's all these great bands that I need to catch up on. And it's great. I mean, like you take a band like Western Standard Time, right? Like I don't know if you're familiar with them, but I listen to them all the time. I definitely love trad ska, but it's like that band came out, you know, how many years after the Scatolites, and like they just made a big band out of ska music, and it's just like amazing, right? And then you got all the modern ska punk bands like Kill Lincoln, Be Like Max, like they're awesome. They are so good. And there's a band from Houston that just had
Catastrophic.
that just had a record and it was put out on Left Alone, Elvis's records. Oh, is it Fusca? Fusca?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh man, that stuff is great. Like,
They're wild.
like, and that doesn't sound anything like what came before it in ska, right? And then like even like the Skints coming out in the last few years, like getting really popular. Like the Skints is such a unique sound, and it all falls under the umbrella of ska. So like I don't know, I think the State of Ska is really good. As a fan, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I agree with you too. Do you think that we're like in a fourth wave, or is just ska right now, or is ska punk like
I think that I don't know, man. I think this is a huge question. I think
yeah.
the internet. I think the internet has just made everything accessible at all times.
Yeah.
So, like, is it going to be a fourth wave? I don't know, but there's still a lot of ska going on.
Yeah.
Um,
Um in your opinion, are the waves for you just based on like the popularity, like so like by saying it's a wave, it's just because ska is popular at this time?
no, I would base it on the how much the music changed with each of
Okay.
the waves as well. Um, but it is kind of loosely based on like the how popular it was at that time as well. But
Yeah.
like with each of the three waves, I mean the genre changed so much too, right? So um because like even in this, like if you want to call it a fourth wave, but like all the versions of the ska bands out now are playing things that are still similar to the several waves before it. Like Western Standard Time is playing trad ska, and then like even the ska punk bands are like it's all just from those same things. So like yeah, I don't know, fourth wave.
Yeah. I mean, it's
We don't
here.
need to we
It's
don't need to
good.
label it.
Yeah.
It's just awesome, right?
Yeah.
Like you know, because yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I know like jazz can tie hand in hand with ska music. I know you have a Poughkeepsie Jazz group. How did you start that?
Yeah, so that's the Poughkeepsie Jazz Project.
Oh,
Poughkeepsie is a
yeah.
city. That's okay. Poughkeepsie is a city here in New York, where I live, and yeah, that was started in 2012, and it was started to give the local community a jazz jam session. And since then it's been a weekly jazz jam session. And we've been at like a couple different restaurants over the years. Uh, Obviously, we're paused right now, but you know, it's just great. Like music is community, and community needs music. And with the Poughkeepsie Jazz Project, like I've helped supply that to my local community, and it's been really great and rewarding. Every Tuesday night for the last 8 years, I get together with some other musicians, just a house band, me, a drummer, and a piano player, and then we play tunes with whoever shows up every week. And like we get a wide array of musicians from hobbyists, beginners, amateurs, students from the local colleges, professional musicians, touring musicians. We all just like want to get together and play every once in a while. And I've met some of my best friends like through this session, and it's just a great way for the community to come together, learn, and talk about music and make music. It's been really great. I also play upright bass for that too. So that's been like I didn't always play upright bass. I only started that like a few years ago. But yeah, jazz is great. And like I think some of like obviously how jazz applies to ska, like you said too, it's like that's kind of where a lot of it all started. And I listened to ska way before I listened to jazz. And some of the first versions of jazz tunes I heard were ska and reggae versions. Like I think the first version I ever heard of Dizzy Gillespie's "A Night in Tunisia" was on the Toasters record, Dub 56. And then eventually I got to jazz school, and they're like, "All right, we're gonna do this tune," and I was like, "Oh, I know this song because I've heard it with the Toasters like a
Yeah, the
million
Toasters
times."
wrote it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then jazz, and for a couple years I played with the New York Ska Jazz Ensemble, and for me that was just like a dream come true because it was just this like mixture of jazz harmony melody with like the ska and Jamaican rhythms, and like I loved that, and I've been a fan of them for years too. And again, with them is how I heard jazz before I really knew or played or listened to jazz. You know, Same thing with like yeah, all the early stuff in Jamaica for sure.
Yeah, that's so badass. What advice do you have to someone who like wants to go to like a jam session if it might be their first time?
Yeah, have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun. Listen, meet people, talk to people. Um, Find people at the jam session who will get together with like just you and make music. Because jam sessions, you don't always get to play all night sometimes too, right? Like you just might only get to play a couple songs or something like that. But like go there, use it as an opportunity to meet people and learn from people. You know, um, yeah.
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 Um, so speaking of learning, I know you're doing some online bass lessons. So like what made you want to teach bass?
So I've always taught lessons pretty much ever since I had my degree because I felt official enough for me to teach. But and then because of the pandemic, there's been less opportunities to perform, so I've kind of focused in on some of the lessons that I do as well. And for the first time ever, I posted from the Big D and the Kids Table page
Hmm.
about me offering lessons, and I'd never done that before. And as I'm sure you would imagine, there's a lot more followers on the Big D page than there is just on my own pages.
Mhm.
So that's actually been like a really great opportunity because I've been able to connect and teach. And I have some students who are fans of Big D, right? And it's just like so cool because like they get ska and they get what I do and where I come from. You know, like I teach to I'll teach to everybody, but it's really great when they just like know what I do pretty well. Um, yeah, what was the question?
Oh, just like what your drive was to teach.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And like, I had studied music and have taken lessons over the years as well. And I mean, passing all of that knowledge and information on to other musicians is great, very rewarding. Um, yeah, I teach everything online now, just like this
Yeah.
or right here. Uh, you know, and yeah, it's been great. Like, I love trying to reapproach a topic to like explain it multiple different ways because everybody learns differently. So it's like,
Mhm.
all right, let me explain it like this. Let me explain it like this. Okay, that one worked. All right, yeah, let's go
Yeah.
with that. And like, it just challenges me as a musician to like think about everything differently.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. So when someone's coming to you for lessons, like do you start just from the beginning? Like if it's just a brand new bass player, do you like what's your approach? Are you just showing them notes or do you go the route like with like reading music or kind of like what's your approach for someone who's new to bass?
yeah. So all of my lessons are like kind of customizable to my students' goals, right?
Mm.
And a lot of it just depends on like where they're at already. Like I actually don't really know if I've had a student who like never played before showing up. I actually think all my students have played a little bit beforehand.
Mhm.
But yeah, all of my lessons kind of start with like a pop quiz. And I just go, all right, can you tell me this? Can you play this? Can you do this? What note is this? Do you know this scale? Do you know this arpeggio? Right, all of that. And then eventually you find the wall of where they don't know anymore. And then I kind of go back and really hammer and make sure that they understand all of the things that they like kind of know, and then I just take it from there. I mean, my long term goal with all of my students, and like it's funny that you're asking me this because I just had a conversation with a new student. It was yesterday, so I just had this whole conversation with a potential new student yesterday, so it's like all very fresh in my head. But my like long term goal with all of my students is to be able to give them the skills and the understanding of the instrument and how the music applies onto the instrument so that they can constructively figure out how to write their own bass lines, how to learn other bass lines, but most importantly, how to play them efficiently and with ease on the instrument, right? Because you can take one bass line and play it 5 different ways on the instrument. And that's sometimes an exercise that I do with my students. I go, all right, well, take this one bass line and play it 5 different ways on the bass. And then when you figure out the way that you like, or you figure out the way that's easiest, why? Why does that way work, right? And then you apply all of this to like having to play for 4 hours, like you said, and like how you play and how you play a bass line affects your endurance and your stamina and your posture and technique and all of that. So um, yeah, like having a good understanding of the bass, like knowing where all the notes repeat, knowing where the scales all kind of spread out and all of that. And I don't like tell my students they have to read music, or I don't tell my students they have to play ska, although I should. Um, but like, yeah, it's like, it depends on what they all want to learn. And I like to help give them the tools so that they can learn and write their own music as well.
Yeah. I was looking at your YouTube channel and
Yeah.
I was watching some of your playthroughs, which is pretty cool. You play through with the music. I was watching the Slackers. Sometimes we'll cover that. Some nights we play a lot of Slackers tunes actually, but I thought that
Well,
was really cool.
they're amazing.
Yeah. I, I agree. I agree. So what are some goals that you have for 2021?
I'd like to play a concert. I'd like to be able to leave my house.
Yeah.
No, all right. For reals though, well, I definitely want to do some more YouTube videos. When I did all of those, a lot of those were just tunes that I had known or learned over the years. Whether they were some like my favorite bass players or just tunes I've worked on with my students, or tunes that I've learned for like other bands and Dickey and things like that. But I'd love to do some more of those videos. I'd love to continue with like a deep dive into Matt Freeman, especially his early Op Ivy stuff, because like I'm sure you know, hearing those bass lines on the recordings is very hard, because it's the quality of the recordings. So like taking a deep dive and going and learning everything that he did has been huge, and I would love to have all of that out there for other musicians to learn from it. I would also love to do a deep dive someday into Matt Malays from the Toasters, like their longtime bass player. He was just insane, like an insane bass player. If you go back and listen to some of like the Toasters '90s live stuff, like Matt was just a monster on the instrument. And I know you had Tim on here a couple months ago, and like
Yeah.
I was just texting with Tim about Matt too. 2021. I don't think my next solo album will be out by then, but I'd like to be close to recording my next solo album between then. If I didn't plug this, the band would be mad at me. But Big D has a new record coming out this year. I don't have anything official to really say, but it should be coming out. It's definitely done, and it should be coming out in August.
Nice.
So
When did y'all record that?
I recorded my stuff well over a year ago. Yeah, and then it just like got finished over the pandemic. We definitely had to pause when the pandemic started.
Yeah.
But like I think exactly a year ago, I was in Salem, Massachusetts, recording my parts. But we've been writing that album for like well over 3 years, for sure.
That's gonna be awesome. I'm stoked
Yeah,
for that.
yeah,
Just,
me too.
so just for some gear heads, like what kind of gear did you use on the album?
Okay, so in terms of in the studio, at least, I mean, pretty much every recording I've ever used, like the Avalon bass DI box. I don't know if you
Mm.
know that, but like it just always sounds amazing. I don't own one; they're like way too expensive for me. But I've used that. I'm pretty sure like every studio I've ever been at. And then I just recorded with for that. I don't know if I used my 5 string on that record. I don't think I did. I think I just used my Big D bass, which is my a Squire P bass with Ernie ball strings and a kick-ass bridge.
Hell yeah. I like
And
a
yeah,
Yeah, I love hearing just people saying like, "Yeah, I'm using a Squire," because I think sometimes people are just like, "Oh, I need a Fender or this or that." It's like Squires or like I have a Sterling Music Man. That sounds amazing. Like I don't need to have a regular Music Man. Like if it sounds good, it sounds good.
I agree with you 100%, Jacob. I've had people come up to me like after the show and be like, I don't know why you're playing a Squire, but like it sounds great. And I'll be like, all right, what's more important, right? It sounds great. Um, and like I don't make a ton of money, right? So I can just I can play a decent bass, and like I just changed the bridges off my Squires. That's all.
Mhm.
That's the only thing I've changed. Everything else is stock. And then if you know how to play the instrument and you know how to get a good sound, it doesn't matter. I mean, like I can't even tell you how many times I've had beer spilled all over me in a Big D show, or how many times I've like hit the headstock on the pole next to the like stage because the club is this big. It's
Yeah.
like I am too scared to buy anything more expensive and play shows with it. My upright bass is the most expensive instrument I own, and like I'm scared the whole time I take it out.
Man, was it a big transition to go from electric to the upright?
Yeah, it's an entirely different instrument. It's like it has the same role, but it's a lot harder and a totally different instrument. I mean, for starters, the physical stamina for playing those strings on something that big is huge. It's very hard. And not have any frets means you actually have to listen the whole time you're playing because you can go out of tune very easily. Yeah, it was a very big transition. I practiced for I think well over a year before I even like attempted to play it with anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is it it's an electric upright, or is just
No,
no?
it's an acoustic upright, and then I have a pickup on the bridge. It kind of like
Okay,
clamps onto the bridge and just gets the tone through all that. Yeah.
nice. Nice. You mentioned just your solo album. When you write for that, are you just more like are you bass focused, or are you just more thinking about the music?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think as bass players, like we have a little bit of an advantage from the perspective of playing music, right? Because we can think from the bottom up. And like when I am playing in a band, everything that I do affects everything on top, right? So like it kind of just gives us this ability to like know what's going on with everything else because we're so tied into the drums and the guitar and the piano. Like it's all connected around the bass for sure. So yeah, I mean, I'm bass focused because I'm a bass player, but I'm not writing the songs to be good bass songs. I'm writing them to be good songs, period. And like a good melody on top with like good rhythm, so everybody can improvise and have fun. Um, yeah, it's not going to sound like a Marcus Miller record or anything. It's going to sound like, if anything, it'll sound more like a Victor Rice record than a Marcus Miller record.
Can you do all the popping and slapping?
No. Yeah, I mean, I can do a little bit of it if I was just messing around like right now. Yeah, no, but
Yeah,
not really.
no, that's cool. Those dudes are pretty wild. Well, I'm stoked for that. Do you just get hire like musicians, or you already have people kind of that that record those
Um,
parts?
yeah, so I did a record like 5 years ago, and that was more of like a jazz straight ahead record, like a hard bop record. This next one is going to be instrumental ska and reggae. So it's in its very early stages of when I would even think about recording it. I'd really love to take some time and jump into composing this winter. But anyways, I think a lot of who is playing on it depends on if I record it in New York City or in Boston.
Oh,
That's to answer your question. Yeah,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
would just yeah, I'd hire everybody I know in the area who can play music right. You know,
yeah,
especially with something like ska and it's like reggae, so you have to find somebody who knows the genre to play it.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Cool. Well, Ben, just thank you so much for your time. I was super nervous to be honest, and then I was like, "Oh, you graduated in 2006 and I graduated in 2006," and that just made me feel way better. I was like,
You,
we're the same."
it's so funny because I did look at your page today to see how old you were. And I saw that you graduated high school in 2006 too. Yeah, I'm just like a little bit younger than most of the guys in Big D, especially all the original members. They're like in their 40s now, and I'm only 33, as you know.
Yeah.
Oh man, don't be nervous. We're all people,
Yeah, for sure,
you
man.
know.
I really enjoyed the talk. I hope we can talk again. But
Yeah,
how can people find you?
yeah. So I have my website, benbasile.com, spelled just like my name on the video. Um, and then I have a Facebook and Instagram as well. And yeah, You'll find everything you need from me on my website for sure. It's got everything. But yeah, Big D's record is going to be coming out later this year. Check it out. It's going to be great. I think it's awesome already. I can't wait to share it with everybody.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Jacob.
Yeah, and
Great.
thank you so much. You have a good night, and
Yeah,
I'll
you too.
talk to you later.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I think we played down there. Oh man, like 5 years ago at this. Like we flew in for this punk festival.
Um,
Um, I don't
was it
know.
at the Corova, like downtown?
I
Uh,
think it was downtown. We all stayed at a hotel that was like across the street.
I I think it was
Street Dogs played.
yeah, I'm trying to remember what they called it. That venue doesn't isn't
Something.
around anymore.
It was like something punk, like
Yeah.
something punk festival.
Yeah, man, that's gonna bother me so much. But I know what you're talking about. They did it like 2 years, and the second
Yeah,
year, it just went indoors. Like something had happened, and they couldn't do like the big outdoor stages and stuff.
yeah, because it was two stages, like an indoor and outdoor. I remember we played. Pilfers and Joystick played. Street Dogs played, and oh man, who's that punk? Like famous punk band? What did they play?
Oh,
Oh, that's
remember the punks?
yeah. It's ironic that we barely remember the name of the festival,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
festival's called
uh,
Remember the Punks.